Welcome to the Santhouse House.
This is our fourth video in our video series about our son Kaeden. So if you haven't seen the first three, you might want to pause this video and check those out first. They're linked down in the description below. Today we're going to talk about Kaeden's journey so far in the early intervention program and some of the things that have kept him from being caught up developmentally from other kids his age.
As we've mentioned in our other videos, Kaeden was born a month early, so he was born at 35 weeks and 6 days, and he actually spent 25 days in the NICU after that. While we were in the NICU, a number of the hospital staff told us that preemie babies often need a little bit of extra support hitting the regular milestones, and because of that, they refer all of the preemie babies to early intervention. They said that they would call us, so we didn't think that much about it after that.
When Kaeden was born, they told us that he had hypotonia, or low muscle tone, also called floppy baby syndrome, which means that his muscles are never fully relaxed and he's often stiff. Basically what that means is that he would have a harder time doing things as compared to other babies his age.
Because Kaeden was our firstborn and we hadn't had any trial run children before that, we weren't completely aware of all of the developmental milestones that babies are supposed to hit during those first few months of life. And it wasn't until right around 4 months when we started noticing that Kaeden was doing a very exaggerated head tilt, and that was also right around the same time that EI called us.
So they called to see if we wanted to have him be evaluated, and we said yes because we had noticed some of these things. And so they came to evaluate him when he was 4 months old. How the evaluation works is that the service coordinator, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, and a developmental therapist all come to your house, and they each try and do different things with your baby to see, can he do this? Can he do tummy time? Can he hold his head up? Can he grab an item? Is he bobbling? A lot of different things. So they're looking for all of these milestones that your baby is supposed to hit at that age. In order to qualify for services, at least in the state of Illinois, I believe every state is a little bit different, but in the state of Illinois, your baby has to be 30% behind in any type of therapy to qualify for services. So Kaeden qualified for PT and OT during that evaluation. Because Kaeden was still only 4 months old, and that's a little bit on the younger side to start OT, they recommended that we just start PT, and maybe that would help cover some of the issues that he was having in OT.
One of the nice parts about being a parent of a child who's in early intervention in Illinois is that all of that tax money you spend actually gets put back into your children. Because in the state of Illinois, the state actually pays a lot of the early intervention cost. And the reason that they do that is they found that it saves them money further down the road to pay for services now, as opposed to trying to pay to catch up your child once they're in elementary school or middle school or high school. So the amount that we actually pay for services every month is dependent on our income and the number of people in our family.
So once Kaeden had qualified for services, we had to get matched up with a physical therapist, and all of that happened through the early intervention program. So they helped us find a therapist and get us started with that. So he started physical therapy right around 6 months, I believe. So the physical therapist would come once a week to work with Kaeden and to show me different things to work with him on. We worked on increasing his tummy time ability, trying to keep his head up better. We worked on rolling over because he wasn't yet doing that. And we worked on doing neck stretches for him if he had torticollis. So torticollis is basically where a baby's head will only turn one direction because the muscle on the opposite side is very tight or short. And Kaeden was presenting with a head tilt, and so we thought, oh, maybe that's what he has. So we were doing these stretches to try and help stretch his neck out and get rid of that tilt. But the weird thing that we noticed was that his tilt would switch sides. So he would have his head tilted one way for a week or so, and then he would have a couple days of it being in the middle, and then he would tilt the other direction for a week or so, which is very unusual and not normal for regular torticollis because they can't physically tilt or turn their head the other way. So we knew that that wasn't what was going on with him. Because it was very confusing, I started doing some research and Googling online, and I found something called benign paroxysmal torticollis, which with regular torticollis, it's a muscle issue, but with benign paroxysmal torticollis, hereon referred to as BPT, because it's long to say, it's a neurological issue instead of a muscle issue. So what we saw Kaeden doing with his head tilt switching sides is exactly how BPT often manifests itself in young babies. that they will tilt to one side and then the next week they'll be tilting to the other side. BPT can also be accompanied by vomiting or headaches as well, which headaches are kind of difficult to tell with a baby if they are having a headache, but vomiting is pretty obvious. Based on everything I read, the cause of BPT is still a mystery, and there haven't been very many studies on it either, but most studies indicate that kids typically outgrow the head tilting by the age of 2 or 3. I also was able to find a couple of Facebook groups of other parents who their kids have BPT, and this was very helpful to me in trying to figure out if this is what he has and hearing how it presented in their kids as well.
There's a few things that make BPT unique. In addition to the fact that there's very little research, there's also no known treatment for it. And because there aren't really any treatment options, the purpose of the diagnosis is really to comfort the parents in allowing them to actually know a little bit more about what's going on. In light of that, we decided not to get Kaeden diagnosed, and instead we moved forward with physical therapy.
So I mentioned it to Kaeden's PT, and she said it made sense for how he's presenting, that this could be something that he has. But at the same time, it also didn't change much of what we were working on in PT. So the only thing that we really changed was discontinuing doing those neck stretches because he didn't have regular torticollis.
So the combination of low muscle tone and presumably BPT do make it very hard for an infant to do things. Partially because your head is very heavy, and when you're a small child and it's constantly tilted one way or another, it's always throwing off your balance.
So as a result, Kaeden hit a lot of his milestones later than other kids his age would have. He didn't sit up on his own without us being concerned that he might fall over until he was 9 months old. And he didn't start rolling over consistently in bed and things like that until he was 9 months as well. When he was 10 months old, that was when he started to crawl forward on his belly. And then it wasn't until he was 13 months old that he started crawling up on his knees. So over a year old.
Once he finally did start sitting up, one of the things that we noticed is something called W sitting. That's where you sit on your knees kind of, but with your feet off to the side. So if you were doing a top-down look, it would look like your legs were forming a W. But that's very common in low muscle tone infants because when you sit that way, it requires you to use less core muscles to hold yourself up. And that's one of the things that our PT was having us focus on. So we got very, very used to, and still are actually fairly used to saying, Kaeden, fix your feet, which means take your feet from where they are in the W position and put them out in front of you so that you have to start using your core to sit up.
At this point, our PT also recommended that we start OT if possible. So we contacted our service coordinator through early intervention, and she had an OT come and evaluate Kaeden in order to start OT services. So Kaeden started OT at 14 months, and they worked with him on things like stacking blocks, using a pincer grip to pick things up, using a whole hand grip, coloring, doing wooden puzzles, and holding his own bottle or sippy cup to drink out of. At 17 months, Kaeden was fully reevaluated again by all of the early intervention people. So that was a year after he got evaluated the first time, and they do a yearly evaluation to see are services still needed, how's he doing, is he making progress, that type of thing. So they decided that we would continue with PT and OT, and they also decided that we would add in DT or developmental therapy just to continue supporting him in all the different areas. So DT is actually very similar to OT. They focus more though on play and doing a lot of imitation, and it's also very child-led.
At this point, when Kaeden was 18 months old, he still was not walking, but he was starting to stand up, leaning against things. And the PT recommended that we get him some really good shoes that would be able to support his feet well.
In relation to the shoes, also, Kaeden's PT wanted us to work on getting orthotics for him to help his feet develop correctly because he started walking so late.
Right around 20 months, he actually started walking, and it was very tentative at first, just a few steps. And then he actually got the flu and stopped walking altogether for about 2 weeks, and we were terrified that he lost his ability. But once he recovered from that, he started walking again and has been getting better every day since then.
The most recent development with all of this is that because of the coronavirus, we have been doing teletherapy with all 3 of his therapists, which has been very interesting, but it's been working out pretty well so far.
So now that he's almost 23 months old, he still has alternating head tilts a little bit, and he's still behind on a few things that we're working on.
So overall, our experience in the early intervention program has been a very good one. Kaeden loves all 3 of his therapists. He's always excited to see them, to have them come, or to see them on the screen right now. and he has a very good relationship with all of them. We're excited to continue in this process with Kaeden and all of his therapists, and we look forward to seeing what he does next.
If you'd like to hear how that's going and hear a little bit more about our lives raising a kid who is in early intervention, we would love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions about this, feel free to comment down below and maybe give this video a like. Other than that, we will see you next time at the Santhouse House.
Bye.
Bye.